What's going on? Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
See how much battery I've got. I'm going to move. Oh, yeah, I'm good. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
What you been up to? Oh, man. Awesome.
Yeah.
Just getting ready. I've had a huge break. Like, I've been out of school for a year. We're still not back yet, which is awesome. And then I've got to go back next week, and I'm having a baby soon.
Yeah. When's the due date?
The end of January, 20 something. But we just haven't paid that much attention to it because it's just going to come whenever we know about the time when it's going to be here.
Cool. Joaquin's is the 25th, so maybe they'll be birthday buddies or gals. Cool. Yeah. And then, but you got out a week. You got out right before Christmas, right? Like you worked that week,
the 19th. So I've had about a month off. You can't find that in many jobs unless unless you're working for yourself or something. And even then, you can't do it.
Even then, you can't do it because then you're not making money.
Yeah.
I know with my dad. I mean, he ran his own doctor's office. He took 2 weeks off a year. That's
all.
Yeah, and then he would do half days on Wednesdays, but that was it. That was like clockwork.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
I don't know. Your dad was a physician.
Yes, he was. He's been retired like 15 years now, I think, something like that.
Have you ever talked to him about all that work he did? Like, I mean, I'm sure when you're a doctor, you do it out of a sense of purpose, right? Like helping.
Well, what was interesting is he actually got a huge scholarship to go to his college through Crest. Like he won a national scholarship. And then after he graduated with his medical degree, he went into research, and then he thought that was super boring. So then, because he wanted to, I guess, help people more.
Mm-hmm.
So then he got out and he got very lucky. They just moved down south, and he found a practice that he purchased the whole practice. And then so he was very fortunate that way.
Mm-hmm.
And he liked what he did. So, but he doesn't miss it.
No,
he's very happy with being retired.
Really?
Yeah. Cause I always worried. I thought he was one of those guys that like loved his job and identified as, that person, and it was going to be really hard for him to retire. And I don't know if anyone's had an easier time doing it. He's like, I don't have to be on call and I don't have to worry about anything. And all my kids are healthy and I have money and like, what else do you want?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you're talking about like, I wonder if no matter what job you have, if you'll end up getting tired of it, because like that's kind of where I am now. In this phase, I'm like, oh man, I don't know if I want to. I question how much longer I want to teach.
Okay. Do you have an inkling of what you'd want to do instead?
No, but I don't. But I do feel like I kind of relate it to self-actualization, like because it's kind of an intuitive thing, and I'm not sure that I'd want to even do it forever. It's kind of I just feel driven, and I have felt that way even since Columbia to kind of eventually do something like this, but I don't know what, but I feel like I should do something creative.
Okay, right. Okay.
And I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means food or or something beyond that. I guess I just gravitate towards food because I used to work in food and bev, and that's pretty much the whole thing. I mean, I'm not going to make movies or something, but I don't know. I just and when I say creative, I almost mean, even just kind of designing your own business is a creative act in itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't even, like, my goal is, I think, realistic. Like, I wouldn't even necessarily want to do it forever. I just would want to be able to make enough money to just month to month as like a sabbatical thing while I'm not teaching. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's an important aspect of like the teaching profession that they should probably look into, is like the idea of sabbaticals, because it is just such a personal job that, I think it wears on people. And so it'd be nice to just take 6 months and do something else and then get back to it.
And I think that's the key too, because like it's also such a great job, and I'm so spoiled now. I've had so many wonderful opportunities that I'm almost just getting numb to it. Like I'm almost not even appreciating what I've got, honestly. And I think sometimes I remember when I started teaching, I was a waiter at the time. I just graduated college, and I used to hate going to work as a waiter, and I knew that I never wanted to feel that way. And I just felt like if that ever happened as a teacher, I would eventually leave it. And I'm not quite there yet by any means, but I am starting to wonder what else. Because I don't know, are we supposed to do the same thing forever and ever, like, or in the same capacity? Let me put it that way. I guess what's really wearing on me, honestly, is just institutions and
right, yeah,
institutional culture. And I don't, and maybe there's not a, I feel like schools are inhuman, or they're not humanistic. Let me say it that way.
Yeah,
they are very much based on a factory model, and I don't know how much they really focus on the holistic part of being a person.
Right. No, I've been thinking a lot about this because we're gonna have some sort of schedules meeting at some point. So I'm preparing myself. And like I haven't figured out, I haven't read why, but like just the arbitrary number of 180 days that you have to go to school. I mean, that was probably based off being farmers or whatever. And then through that, then it was mandated that you had to be like, 7:30 to 3, right? And so they had all these constrictions, and then all of a sudden you're just trying to fill the day with content so it looks like you're doing work, kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? Because that's kind of where we've evolved. We've evolved to kids have to sit there for 8 hours and learn, and it's impossible. It's impossible to do that. So it's like this huge imaginary thing that we're doing, which is really weird. It's very strange. So, because like the more I read about the brain, it makes no sense what we do. Really almost none. So,
that's well, I feel very validated since I've done no reading. I only feel this way.
Yes. Well, it's intuitive. It is. It's intuitive. Because you just think about yourself, and there's just sometimes where you just can't do it because you just don't have the capacity. And we just plow through that. We're just like, nah, let's do these worksheets and turn this in and grade and all this stuff. So, so it would be interesting though to look at that 8-hour day and create something that is meaningful and beneficial to each person.
What are you thinking? What would you do with your ideal 8 hours?
I think after I'd really want to. Well, okay. Right now, what I'm trying to do in the class, because they're 10 or 11, my kids, we do 10 minutes of focused work, and then they get 5 minutes of what's called diffuse time. And I'm messing around with what that looks like. Sometimes they just get free where they can just do what they want, like chat with someone. Sometimes I make them be silent just to be still. I try to go through like this brain map thing, like the good brain activities that you can do, like what your brain needs every day kind of thing. And then we go back to 10 minutes of working, and then 5-minute break, 10-minute working. And then after 45 minutes, they get 15 minutes to go outside. And so I would like to see something like that. And I would take away like snack and recess and lunch and just do that as a class when you're hungry. Right.
You would make food? What do you mean?
Yeah, I mean, that would be odd, but like in the institution, you would have to convince the food service people to be a little bit more flexible and be able to deliver the food when like the kid needs it, and try and kind of rethink that. So I know that would be difficult, but just the idea of having standardized breaks and everything kind of is strange, because then you have to have duties and stuff and a whole schedule. It just complicates things. So if you simplify everything down, I think that makes the most sense. And then you can't ignore that after 1 o'clock, everyone is tired. So that would just be creativity and art and physical activity, things like that. I wouldn't teach anything after 1 o'clock. The focused thing. It would just be kind of hanging out, creation, kind of being imaginative and creative and playing and stuff like that. So I would have a maximum of 4 hours of, actually probably maximum of 2 hours of like strictly focused work, and then you're done.
So would you keep subjects? Like, would you have?
Yeah, probably. So or mix them up or something. I don't know.
I was going to say, with that 2 hours of focused work, what do you imagine with that?
I don't know if it would be interesting to experiment, because you would want, I don't know if it makes sense to focus on reading one day and then writing the next, or like you get to kind of choose what you're doing. I don't know, because I also know too, like I'm really getting worried about the whole like direct instruction is like another, like my real big fear right now is like all the research we look at, like when we look to see what is good practice, like if we're not being respectful of people's brains, aren't we then researching what works on tired brains that really aren't learning? So then like all the evidence that we have of good things is just good things to do with tired kids instead of like what's best to do kind of thing. that's kind of my line of thought right now, where educational research is built on just an entire house of cards, I guess.
So are you not over, like, just hearing you talk, like I can just feel this, I don't know, kind of an anger that I have.
Right.
Because I mean, you know this, and we've known this for a long time. And now, granted, some of these ideas would push people out of their comfort zone because it's hard. But the point that I wanted to get at is, what if people just don't change at all? What if the institutions just don't change, which is kind of what I feel.
Yeah. I mean, that's when, I don't know. But the thing I've started to read and look at that I've kind of known something about was the adult development. Have you ever, dived into that?
No.
So we go there's 4 stages to adult development, and it has nothing to do with age. So you can be 85 years old and still be in the first stage of development, which is a very selfish stage, and it's just what I want, and others don't really matter that much. They kind of get in your way, and you'll follow rule. You think everyone like dictates your emotions. Like someone did something that made you angry. Like you don't take credit, ownership over anything. It's all everyone else's fault kind of thing. And then the second stage that's called self-sovereign. And then the second stage is I can never remember the stupid names. You start to belong to groups, and you start to think as a group, and you kind of lose your own voice. And so you just think as like you're more ideological, I guess. And it's all about the group, and you're extremely empathetic, more so that you just follow the group. You don't do anything against it. And that's where most, like it's 18% of the people are in the first stage of adults. And then it's like 40-something% are in the second. And then the third one is it's called self-authoring. And so you kind of take all the pieces. Okay. And then like one of the problems with when you're in the group stage is that if you belong to two different groups and they disagree, then you're stuck. You have no idea what to do because you follow the group. And so if they're the ones that are making the decisions for you. And so if you see a break in that, it's very hard for people to do anything. And so then from there, you go into self-authoring, which is making up your own mind about things, taking all the pieces that you see and start to internalize them and use the ones that you think work best for you to get a kind of a philosophical view of the world so that you can kind of make your own decisions and you start owning things. It's like your work and it's your responsibility and it's kind of your fault if things screw up. And that's like another 30%. And then 1% of adults get into the self-transforming. And that's where you kind of see everything is connected. And you see just gray everywhere because like the first 2 stages is just black and white. It's either yes or no, it's right or wrong. They think things are very simple. They don't see complexity. You bring up complexity and they get very angry and very agitated and they don't know what to do with it because they can't process it. But in that fourth, the self-transforming, then you kind of lose the illusion that you know what you're doing and that your principles and priorities are correct. And you see that really anything can be right. You just have to listen to people and understand perspectives and kind of it's knowledge and wisdom and stuff like that. And that's like 1% of adults. And I wonder if, because at some point when I read the book and study it more, I want to present this to leadership. But I wonder if like all the leaders would be like, oh yeah, I'm in that 1% of self-transfer. You know what I mean? Where half of them are most likely going to be in the second stage. Some of them might be in the first stage. And so I guess trying to connect to the point of the institution is, if your institution does not acknowledge that adults can change or that they need to change or that it's really not their fault the way they act, just like with kids, it's not really their fault. I mean, this is just who they are right now and we need to help them. And it's just the same with adults. Adults need to develop. It's not like they just automatically become something. And so if we can take the time to do that and we can transform adults and move them along the line, then I think the institution then transforms. But if you take no time to try and transform the adults within the institution, then there's no chance that the institution can do anything. And I think too, if you look at the system I don't think you can change this. Like you can't totally get rid of the system and change it. You have to kind of look within that 8-hour day. Like if it's an 8-hour day, it's an 8-hour day. I understand that you probably couldn't change that right now because that would be huge on families and people working. Like I'm aware of that. So it's like, what can you do with that 8-hour day that's the most beneficial? And I think if we can get people on board with this idea that if you work all day, you're really not learning. Like, and it's much better for your child to play and take breaks, and it's like, it's okay. And we can kind of get past that uncomfortableness of not doing anything, you know, and kind of make school a place where kids can disconnect from their outside world. Like if they're not being brain healthy out there, then I think the institution can become something a little bit better.
Yeah. So do you, like, with that 8-hour day, so I mean, so you accept, and it's not even worth arguing with then, based on what you're saying, that the 8-hour day is essentially because we do have to have them in our like, I forget the word, but anyway, we have to watch them. Their parents are at work and they have to be there.
Yeah. Until jobs work. And I think that's something that, or jobs change. Like if jobs change, which they are, it seems like, then maybe that changes too. But until people are home, like if they're out of their house, that their kids have to be cared for. And so at some point we made the decision that a bunch of strangers were going to take care of our kids.
Well, that's, you know,
so we could make money and survive.
There's a whole lot of things wrapped up in this, right? Because it's also, it's the whole social fabric. Because then it, you know, this is like my existential crisis at the moment. It's like, so why have a child if you're going to not even see that? Like, I see people's kids more than they do.
Right. Oh, it's awful. It's awful, Kel. It's awful.
And I'm just like, what are we doing? What as a, you know, what are we doing? And I don't want to do that. Like, I want to be radical enough to do something really different.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to feel like, maybe I felt this for a long time, but what I was about to say is that I have so many thoughts rush my mind at once. I forgot what I was trying to tell you, because at the same time I was saying that, I wanted to say that it'll come back.
Get there. It'll come back.
Yeah. What were you just saying that prompted?
Adult development, institutional change, the 8-hour day, and you can't change that. And we had to work. And so and then strangers are taking care of our kids, kind of thing.
Strangers are taking care of our kids. Oh yeah. Well, I guess this is like, how much is the school just a reinforcement of the social standard? I mean, I guess that's exactly how it manifests, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it has to be, because it's part of society, right?
Well, it's not and it's not a component for change or progress. I don't know. I mean, maybe it is. I'm putting this out there as a question. Maybe it's just a form of, because that's how I'm feeling at the moment, that it's just a way of reinforcing the status quo, and especially working at private schools with the elite of any country that you go to. Yeah, we're almost certainly doing that.
Yeah, but then it's I think it's trying to find people who I don't know, because it's exposing kids to bigger ideas because we're able to. And again, I think if society starts to shift and change, and maybe, like I went back to the idea of the adult development. If you can develop adults, then you have people that don't see themselves as part of the institution, but as an autonomous being. Then I think you can have more change. You know, if you just have a bunch of people working who only view themselves like just are incapable, like they're incapable. They only it's either just what they want to do, or they're just trying to fit within a group, and that groups might be the institution, or it's going to be not the institution, which might be even worse. Because if it's just they have buddies and friends and they're just in that group and they don't care at all about the institution or the children in the institution, and they're not part of that group, then like I think that's a recipe for not great stuff happening.
Yeah. I think, and one thing I was going to say when I kind of lost my footing there was, I think my founding myths of a teacher are being questioned greatly at the moment, and that's why I'm like questioning where I go from here, because the founding myths being, hopefully you're in teaching for all the right reasons, right? The typical things that you hear, like you want to help kids, you want to, you know, help improve society. I mean, those were certainly the myths that drew me toward the profession and made me love it. And those are, I'm now questioning all of those. Like, I'm wondering if I'm in the place, in the position where I'm actually doing that, or am I just going to work now, just like everybody goes to work, just to get a paycheck, essentially.
Yeah, I would. One thing I always try to do is, you know, am into like just asking kids how are things going, like, and having them write about it. Instead of like giving a poll or something about class culture, I just kind of ask open-ended questions. And a lot of times, that's where I get rejuvenated, because, and I do hope, and I do think that once, if I'm teaching a kid some sort of foundational understanding of themselves, then that's something they're not going to forget. And some beliefs and everything. So that it's not 100% across the board, but I do get a lot of kids that, you know, they didn't view themselves as a reader or a writer, or, you know, they didn't identify that at all. And then by the end, they understand that they can learn stuff and that they're able to do things. And so hopefully they're able to take that with them and care about themselves and other people and stuff. But I mean, it's an uphill battle when you're not sure what else is happening to support them, I guess.
And does that have to be done? And is that most effectively done in the setting that you're doing it, which is to say a traditional,
right? Well, again, like
classroom.
I think that there's things like the other day, I was talking to Diana, my wife, about, I was thinking about the hallways. You know, like, do you remember elementary school down in Columbus? It was like these long hallways, and it's a grade level per. And I was like, one change we could do is we could make the hallways multiple ages. So you could do like K4 through 4th, probably, or K5 through 5th, just because there's 6 rooms. And you could make that a neighborhood. And then those kids could just stay in that neighborhood their entire elementary life, getting to know all of those kids and kind of leveraging that viewpoint and just mixing it up. So that's a change, I think, that makes it, that would be a good change. And I think that would be interesting. And it's like, I think it's like changes like that where you're using the structure differently, I think could be very powerful, because then it's more like a family and it's more like a group and it's a tribe and it's multiple ages and people can help each other. And then if you can really, I would love to see the teachers stay long enough to where like the teachers are the same in that neighborhood. And so you can go back my dream is to take a group through, because that's, I just keep hitting brick wall after wall after wall going, man, if I'd known this kid for 5 years, this wouldn't be happening. Or I'd known the parents for 5 years. Like, what a great relationship that would be, instead of some sanitized 1 year thing that doesn't really matter. But if you could get that group of teachers to stay, and that's like a kind of a neighborhood idea, I like that. I think that there would be some power in that. But I mean, that's, you have to make that change and then wait, 5 years to see if it's effective or not. And a lot of people aren't willing to do that. Most people would rather fail conventionally than succeed unconventionally. That was a good quote I heard the other day.
That's interesting too, because there's kind of something implicit in what you're saying too, which as a teacher, especially with our culture, I kind of feel weird even saying this, but like so much is focused on being student centered, which I philosophically agree with. But there's something within that almost suggests that the teacher doesn't matter.
Right. Well, yeah.
Which is a human. That's what I'm talking about, being more human.
Right. Yeah.
And how can you really have success if you have constant turnover? I don't think you can.
You can't.
Like I'd like to be part of a learning community, wouldn't you?
Oh yeah.
I mean, if you had, and this is kind of what we've talked about with the barn school concept, like if money and time were not an option, and you could create the experiences that you want for your children, what would it look like? And I don't have that answer yet, but I'm pretty sure that I wouldn't do the way that I'm educating everyone else's kids. I mean,
right.
As far as this, like, to me, I don't know why this has happened at this point in my career, but the setting has become so important, and my skin just crawls in the setting of this sterile, unhuman thing that I don't like. Look, my classes change with bells. I mean, you're supposed to clock in when you come to work. It's such a factory paradigm that it's just like, what are we doing? Are you kidding me? It's very frustrating.
Yeah, that's I only had one job where I had to clock in.
and for a teacher too, that's offensive, to be honest with you, because it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, you're wondering. So I think a lot of times, like, things just start to happen, and people don't think about what it's communicating, because there's no trust that communicates. I have no trust for you as a person. I need to make sure you get here and leave. I have no other reason why you would make people clock in. It's
trust. Like, that was the first thing that stood out to me. And the second thing is, so Do you think I don't? You think I don't work at home? And is this telling me that when I hit this clock out button,
I'm done.
I'm done, dude.
Well, see, yeah, that's another message that they're sending that they probably don't understand on some level. It's like, yep, you're finished. You're good. You're good to go. You don't have to think about anything or do anything. It's all good.
Yeah, and that would be ideal, except for teachers aren't really like that.
Right.
Teachers, most people teach for deeper reasons, right?
Yeah.
And they're gonna do extra stuff. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, it is.
But yeah, the setting, that's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
The setting is just so, because even like my physical space gives me bad feelings.
Yep. Yeah. I went through that same thing. I cleared so much stuff out of my room. There's like 12 desks and then 4 tables. So I used to have like 20 something desks and 5 tables, but I was like, it's just too much. And so I just cleared everything out. And so it feels better. It's not great. Yeah. And I always like at the school, it has, in elementary, we have great windows. So it's always nice to get that natural light in. I've always find that very important. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's interesting. Just all, like you're right, the spaces are fascinating. But with that too, an experiment I'm going to try. I read this book about habits. It's called Atomic Habits. It's very good. And he talks about how to build habits and how to break them. And like compound interest and how if you do small changes, it all leads up to this big thing. And what was really cool was this idea that once we start working on something, we expect to see a linear growth. Mm-hmm. And that's not what happens. It's very flat, and then it just shoots up. Uh-huh. And so that he calls the area between what we think and then what actually happens, like the valley of disappointment, because we think we should be stronger after 6 months of doing the same thing, but we don't get stronger until the 12th month, and then we get like a really big impact. Mm-hmm. But we give up before that point because we think we should have. So it's just sticking with stuff. It's showing up. It's doing the thing. Mm-hmm. So anyway, one of the things he says to break a habit is you make it invisible, like because what happens is you get a cue. So something happens and there's this cue, and then you want the thing because your dopamine's going crazy in your brain. So then you act on it, and then you get rewarded. So that's how we create our habits, and mm-hmm. the brain loves habits, so it doesn't have to think about it. So like the main habit I've seen in class is like a kid sees another kid, and they're just compelled to talk. Like they have created the habit of talking. And so what I'm going to try and do is create movable like cubicles, like really. For mm-hmm. focus time, just for the focus, not like mm-hmm. just so for 10 minutes at a time, they can be in their own little world where it's like this cardboard wall that they've built. They can decorate it a little bit and have like posters or something on there to help them focus and stuff. But mm-hmm. just so they don't see their friends, because if they see, I can't blame them. Like I'm out of the blame business. It's not their fault. It's just that's what they do. So it's like, how do I make their friends invisible? Oh, okay, build a wall. No, build a little, portable thing that we don't have up the whole time, because then that would be depressing. But that we mm-hmm. take down and put up when we need to focus, because I think there's times you have to focus so you can learn, so sort of thing. So mm-hmm. We're trying to put that into place here in the upcoming weeks. Mm-hmm.
So tell me that one more time. So how does the brain builds a habit? And you were saying about the dopamine. What was that process?
So there's a cue. So, but what's interesting is not every cue is the same for people. So he was saying like you walk by a casino. If you like to gamble, you hear the sounds. Yeah. And then you hear the sounds like, ooh, I get a craving. Uh-huh. That's what it was. So it's a cue, it's a craving, and then you act on it, and then you get a reward. And so if you go through those 4 items, then that becomes a habit. Uh-huh. And had you ever heard about the experiment they did where they blocked dopamine in rats? Did you ever hear of this one?
Well, keep going, maybe. Keep
going. They died. They sat there. They didn't do anything.
No, I've not heard that.
They didn't eat. They didn't have sex. They did nothing. They just stayed there and they died of hunger. They would eat if you gave them food, but they lost the will. They didn't want to do anything. So dopamine is what triggers us to do anything, which is super. Yeah. So that's it. It's just dopamine.
You're just driving me into the darkness here, Ben.
No, what? I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. That wasn't my intention.
What kind of mechanism are we that if we don't have this, like essentially it's a natural drug and it's pleasure based, and if we don't have that, then we just don't do anything. That's pretty much it. Like it's pretty simple.
But you use it to create better habits. Mm-hmm. So, but we have the capacity as humans to make decisions to say, I want to be better. And one of the things he says is crucial is you have to identify as that. You have to see yourself as a writer or as an artist or as a, you know, and once you can, or you want to be, it's like, I want to be this thing, then we have the ability to become that. We just have to, and it's by doing small little things, but then doing those over and over and over again. And then all of a sudden you're better at it. So then, and going from there. So, I mean, then that's a cool thing, and using the dopamine for you, because like with food and stuff, he was talking about, like, you know, it's not like the reason we eat crap is because it's dynamic. It has our brain's like, ooh, every time it's different. This is fun. Whereas with kale, you know, it's just just like eating. And you're like, yeah, okay, great. So so now I've understand that like anything that is bad for you, like our brain loves, you know, because there's something going on. So it's been through evolution where, you know, we needed it. Like now I heard about information. Like we had to have information to survive. Like we needed to know where the food was, where the lion was. But now we were connected to information, and it's just we have the habit of wanting it, but we don't know how to block it. And so that's like it's understanding your humanness and what your body and brain is doing. I think is so very important, so that you're able to kind of block things and change stuff.
Yeah.
You know.
I almost can't even control it, man. Like the other day, our internet went out for like 2 or 3 days, and it was the most productive time that I've had.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, and it's not, I mean, right now, as I'm talking to you, I've got like 10 pages up on my laptop, and I'm so obsessive that I'll actually try to at least skim each one.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much I'm even retaining when I think I'm doing stuff that's beneficial.
Yeah. Yeah. Even when you're reading good stuff, it's like, what are you retaining? Exactly.
I wanted to share this. This is kind of, this is kind of a different direction. I just wanted to mention this because I thought you'd find it interesting. Because you made me think of this when you were talking about the dopamine and all that. I was listening to a podcast the other day. I can't remember the name of it. I think you'd dig it. I'll look it up and send it to you in a message. But they were talking about how food companies, they were just talking about how our brain is constantly under assault. Like it's not just you making a choice. Like we are being pulled in a million directions constantly through. Basically, is the hypothalamus, am I thinking of the right word for like the reptile core of our brain? Essentially, is that the hypothalamus?
Yeah, and the amygdala. I think the amygdala as well. Okay. So I think those work in conjunction.
Well, basically, they were saying this thing's just being attacked constantly through your sexual drives, through your cravings for food and whatnot. And so they were saying that like these focus groups for McDonald's or Snickers or whatever food it happens to be, they'll take like a milkshake at McDonald's, for example, and they'll bring in a group of people and they'll add X amount of sugar, and they'll ask the people if they enjoy it, and they'll say yes. They'll increase the amount of sugar. Do you enjoy that? Yes. And so they'll go and they'll keep adding sugar each time until they finally get to the point where they say, no, I don't like that. The one just before that is where they sell it to you.
Right. It's just it's just awful.
I mean, and it's so convoluted now. Like it's just so overwhelming sometimes. I think that's just one piece of what our whole society is driven to do this, because we are a consumer buying and selling driven paradigm. You know what I'm saying? So everything is trying to get us to continue to do that in like an addictive manner.
Yep.
That's why I'm like, dude, I'm about to just go buy some land in Choco on the Pacific side and just disappear. Like, I'm not sure that'll be the best for my kids either.
Captain Fantastic thing.
Yeah, exactly. I wish that I've watched that movie a couple of times actually.
You're getting ready for parenthood.
Yeah. But how do you do something like that though? Like, sorry to jump there, but since you brought that up, like that's like when I talk about the barn or the farm or whatever, it would be something kind of similar to that. Whereas it's a whole integrated learning. Like when you're talking about building habits, and I don't know if you feel this way. Not that I'm as disciplined as I should be, because I'm certainly not. But I've been through those phases in life where I was trying to get fit, for example, and my whole life hinged on whether or not I could conquer my flesh, so to speak. That's kind of a religious way of saying it, but like. My impulse to be lazy and to sit around, I had to overcome that. And until I can do that on a personal, physical level, I really couldn't apply that to any phase of my life. Like I was just kind of lying to myself. For me, it starts with, and I think that's one reason, and I hate not to put words in her mouth, but I think that's something that Angela kind of finds with her yoga practice, is that has to be the first thing she does every day. Because if she can't do that, then other things get out of line.
Yep.
And I feel like that concept, like no one ever taught me that in PE, you know what I'm saying? But that concept of physical well-being and command of your organism, as they say in Spanish, that should be part of our so-called curriculum as well. I mean, that's knowledge of self beyond anything else.
For sure.
I mean, and I don't know if I'm right about that. I just have this in my own personal experience. It seems like it starts there. And if I can't get that part, like if I can't get off of this computer when we're done and go run,
right.
I'm kind of lying to myself about what I'm going to do with the rest of this day.
Yeah. But then in the book, he argues that you would just need to believe at this point that you want to be the person that gets off and runs. And as long as you want to be that, then you will keep trying at it. But what happens is we are told what we are, and we believe what we are because of the feedback we receive. And so we have all of these data points that tell us, oh, I'm lazy. And like, no one's lazy. It's just, you know, your body wants to save energy, and there's times where you have to overcome that, and you do that through small little steps. But if you don't understand that and you just believe you're lazy, then you don't get off the hammer and you don't go and do anything. So I think you're 100% right, where that has to be a calling card of education, is educating people about themselves and why they do what they do. And you know, I try to have the kids. It's so funny. I get such pushback from kids. These 10-year-old kids, I have them because I read this article about like self-control is an illusion. Have you seen that? Do you know this?
No.
Like this whole thing that it just comes from like religion and stuff, and we think it's good, and like there's
the concept of self-control. What are you saying?
The concept of self-control,
okay.
like that, and that it's important, and that you can do it, and like strong people are more they're more dedicated and disciplined. And that's what they found is like people who have more self-control don't surround themselves with temptation. Like that's their key, is just through their day they've developed habits to not have temptation. And so that's the illusion. The illusion is because if they had temptation, they would do it, because we're just designed and engineered that way. That's who we are. And so it's the ability. So anyway, so one of the things that they talked about where people can have quote unquote more self-control or just understanding is if you do like these 3 things. One is, which is like show gratitude, like having a gratitude journal, showing self-compassion, and in the form of like writing your letter to your future self, kind of like explaining, like forgiving yourself for mistakes, and like, you know, it's okay that this is what I'm trying to do, and I hope I've done it in the next 2 weeks. And then the other one is taking pride in accomplishments. So, you know, like it's okay to be proudful about important things, not like stupid things. So I have my students do this, and I have a couple who refuse. They refuse, which I think is interesting. And I'm like, I really want, and I don't know if they can verbalize really why they don't want to do it. You know, and I don't know like what is causing them to just refuse. They refuse to do it. This one kid actually was like, well, I throw my notebooks out at the end of the year. I was like, oh, well, I don't want you to throw your notebooks out at the end. I want you to do important things that you care about and love. He's like, well, no, I'm not going to do this, because maybe it is important. He doesn't want important things to happen in school. Kind of, you know what I mean? It's fascinating. So I'm every day is deeply fascinating. So anyway,
is your role do you find like, do you need to force them to do it, or do you encourage them to do it, or do you help them?
I try to never force. I try to check in, and like I'll probably need to have a one-on-one conversation with that kid to really see what's up. And then like if it's like a big thing, then maybe get help with that kind of, you know what I mean? Like who knows what is causing it to not want to write down. Why would you not want to write down what you're grateful for? Like I think that's interesting. And it could just be he views himself as someone who doesn't like school and just refuses to do what teachers want him to do. And that could be that could just be it.
As always, I'm going to be all over the place because
I'm
usually manic when we talk anyway. So I'm usually manic in life. And because you know, something I wanted to say to you earlier to see what you thought about that, and you were saying that he doesn't like school. Like, should kids wanting to come to school be a prerequisite for learning to actually take place? And I'm going to say that to tell you that most of my kids don't want to come to school. They don't like school, and they are explicit. And even the so-called good students who I have a good relationship with, who will talk to me and tell me this, they almost disdain coming to school.
Do they say why?
Well, it basically comes down to they feel, and it could be an adolescent thing. I don't know. I'm teaching grade 8, but they feel controlled, and they don't feel that they have voice, and they don't feel sometimes that they also feel unjust. They feel like teachers make decisions that are unjust, that are unfair.
Yeah.
And I think they want more freedom and choice.
Yeah. Well, I think, and especially because, I mean, I don't want to say unfortunately, but where we find ourselves in society is they have complete and utter choice outside of school. Like they get to watch what they want. They have access to everything that they want, and they get it on demand. And then you go to school and you have no voice. So I think that is hugely important, is that kids do need to have choice. Like just that they're human. Like you want, like adults want. It's so funny that there's a lot of, like, I guess in their development, some adults just don't see that the kids need to be treated exactly how they want to be treated as an employee. Do you know what I mean?
Well,
like they don't even, it's a complete, they don't see the similarities of that at all. They don't see like, I need my break time and I want a nap room. I'm like, what about, it's like, yes, I would love a nap room too. Don't the students need naps? Like more than us anyway? And it's like not even a thought that the student would need choice and ownership over their time. Because like I give the students breaks, like we go out to recess like a ton. I don't ask them to do anything. Like, but you see a lot of teachers like wanting to control. It's like they have to go out and play a group game and they have to do this and they have to do that. And so anytime you're even able to give a kid a choice, even just to play, we're so, I don't know what it is, but we take that away from them even then. Like we remove that choice. And so it's just, I think it is a huge problem in a lot of schools where you're not, and that might come from not trusting the kids to do the right thing or whatever. I don't know.
And like all over the place. Like one thing I want to say is you can tell that the way that you treat kids at your institution is not indifferent to how that your admin is going to treat teachers. I mean, look, for example, look at how our kids feel. And then I'm at a place where you have to clock in to go to work.
Well, yeah.
There's not a surprise there.
No.
All this being said, and tell me what you think about this, because I don't know. I'm just telling you how I feel. That's all, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to put my kids in a school system, and even saying the word system freaks me out. Like I really don't know.
Yeah.
Or perhaps let me say it like this: if I do, I would prefer to have that kid in a very different humanistic style setting up to the first 8, 9, or 10 years, and then and maybe I'm wrong about that, but I can't imagine me just putting my kid in, I'm trying to choose my words,
a normal school.
We'll put it like that. Yeah. A normal school.
It's very hard. And I mean, that's one of the reasons we kept Amelia out for a year, is like, we could, because she was right at the cutoff date for starting school. So we're like, no, we'll wait. And I guess one of the reasons, like I would like to try and be part of change. Like if I could actually get institutional change and like be a part of that and understand it to where we can communicate it to others and it kind of catches on, I think for me, that's hugely important. And so that's why I'm willing to put my kids in the system, because I'm in it and I'm trying like everything to try and change it. And I also like Diana's, she's going to be principal of K4, K5 and first. So that's also, that's good.
Yeah.
So it's, what can we do? What can we change? I think, that's my hope. And if worse comes to worse and the system doesn't change, then, I don't know what, but something has to give, because I'm not gonna just shove them through. Like if it starts to fail, it starts to fail and we have to figure something out. Cause that's not fair. To the most important people in your life, but like you said, like you brought up earlier, I've gone through so many crises where I'm like, if I'm this good teacher, why the hell am I not teaching my own kids during the day? Do you know what I mean? It's offensive. Yeah. Like I do when they're tired and I'm tired, and that's when I teach them. But like, why am I not in charge of their education? It's very strange.
Well, because that freaks me out too. And like, I know, normality for me is not the hallmark of well-being or where I should go. So, like I remember my friend, who's a guy that I respect a lot, and he was like, man, he just works a blue collar job, and he just says, I'm giving all of my energy to a job that I don't care anything about.
That's brutal.
And so when I get home, I've got nothing left.
Yeah.
Well, it's not that I don't have anything left, but my best energy has now been expended by the time I get home at 4 or 5 o'clock. And for me, you know, because these are like deeply religious or spiritual or existential questions, you know what I mean? Like, why are we here, and why am I choosing to have children, and what's the future of this, and how ought I to do this? Like, I mean, these are all important questions, right? And and even me as a teacher, and I mostly enjoy my work, and even when I come home, I'm wiped out, man. Like, so I'm still, it's like what you're saying, I'm still going to miss those important times with my family, and then if my family is waiting for me when I get home, I don't know. I don't have answers yet. I've just got questions, and that actually, I'm happy about that. I'm happy that I'm unsettled, and then I'm moving and looking for trying to figure out where do I go from here. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's growth. Yeah, it's a strange thing that we've done to ourselves, this society. So, because that's across the board. Like, if you work, your best hours are spent away from. If you work and you have a family, then that's the sacrifice you're making. And then what's really the thing that really drives me nuts now is we've made parenting very, very difficult for a good reason. Like, the humans that we are wanting to raise now are far beyond the humans that we were raising, 10, 20, 30, 40, hundreds of years ago. And we've made parenting super difficult. Because, like, the amount of patience and the amount of, like, it used to you just smack them, right? You just like, they're out of line, you smack them, and that's it. Like, and that's super easy. Like, that's, you don't need any patience and any brain. Like, you just smack them and job. But this is the first time I've really talked about this. Okay. And we've removed the support of the family and the tribe, right? Like, because you used to have a lot of support. Like, there were people all over the place that could help you and like take care of the kids. There was also a ton of kids around. And that's one thing I've noticed whenever we've hung out with other families, the kids just leave and they go and play by themselves for hours. And it's awesome, because I think the other thing that we've accidentally done is adults now are way too involved with their kids. Because we've removed everyone else. So now you just have these friends of yours that are little and your children, and like, you get super involved in their life, and you make them like think that they're super important, which, like, they are, but like, maybe we're making them too important, and it's just really bizarre. It's like a very bizarre thing that's happening. And like, I don't know, the weird thing, like, I don't know. We get too involved, I think, with our kids, instead of just letting, like, it should just be, you go play with the kids, just go play, have fun, learn about life, and then we'll talk later when something happens, and I'll spend some other time with you. But I shouldn't spend all the time around my child. Like, that doesn't make any sense either. And it's just, so it's a weird thing that where we are as a society.
Yeah, I just saw, and I just speak. Correct me anytime, because you never know when you're offending someone, right? These are just my old backwoods impulses. I don't know what I'm talking about, right? But like in South Carolina now, there's a bill. There's a guy trying to get a bill passed, or a law where it would make it okay. And I literally just heard this term like 1 to 2 weeks before I read this, and I'm just like, what are we doing? The term is free range parenting.
Yes, yeah, that's what I am. I'm a free range parent, I believe.
Well, that makes me. Like, think of the psychology of that. Like, this I still can't get away from when I was like 20 and I believed in the Illuminati, I'm like, something's going on here. Like, because this is like agenda setting theory where you're like, oh, you mean normality?
Right.
You mean normal human existence? Now I've got to put a term on it and call it free range parenting.
Yes, you do.
Oh my God. Like, that's the stuff that pushes me to just go buy some rainforest.
Yes. I'll show you free range. I'll show it to
you. Just the fact that we even have to have a term for what's just normality now, like.
It's embarrassing. It should embarrass us as people. It should really embarrass the society.
And that you need to stipulate that this is legal, because in some places they're saying,
well, yeah, they call child services and stuff.
Well, and what kind of child are you raising? Like, I don't want to dislike my child, and you're going to make me raise a child that I don't have respect for. You know what I mean? Like, exactly. Someone that is, not to say that everything was perfect when we were kids, but something, I just feel like there's a zeitgeist of fear that's just coming to like a crescendo. And it's just like, are we really that less safe than we were when you and I were kids? Or are we just are we so inundated with
the inundation,
the possibility? Yeah.
It's the possibility. And that's a brain thing too, where as a parent, if you're aware of the danger, it's very hard to put your child in that danger. And so when you hear about, you know, that there's a really good book, I think I told you about, like, factfulness. Like, you hear a fact or a number and it's just thrown out there and you have no idea what that number means, but the news or whoever is telling you that that number means that your child will die, kind of thing. And so then you're like, well, I don't want my child to die, so, you know, they're not going outside ever, you know, or I don't want them to get hurt. So you have to look at the other numbers that came before it, and kind of, like, we don't teach anything about statistics really in schools, and that's like a hugely important, like, if there's some math you should know, it's to understand numbers and what they mean, and understand that if they tell you that 2 million 1-year-olds died last year, which I think is the number, to know that, yes, that's awful, but in 1976 it was like 18 million. Wow. So it's like, you know, it's like we do great things, and life is not perfect, and we have a long way to go, but it sure as hell it's probably the best. I think it's the best it's ever been. I mean, there's certainly things that we need to change, but like life, I mean, not for everyone. I mean, I think the idea of utopia is fascinating, because if everything's good, then isn't that going to drive us crazy? But anyway, that's a side thing. But it's still going pretty well for a lot of people. You know, so we've never had this few poor, and that's probably one of the reasons plastic is such. You know, plastic is great because it's cheap, but then it's killing the world. You know, so but it improves people's lives because they're able to maintain more water and be healthier. So it's like, where do you draw the line? And then as this advanced society that we are, and these rich people, we're trying to tell the poor people, you need to stop making coal, like, you need to stop making carbon dioxide and try and get a better life. You need to stop, because you're ruining our precious privileged lives. So please, poor people, stop what you're doing, and please don't move up the ladder. We just need to end this so that our area is safe, and we don't have to worry about anything.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
Yeah, conservation is a prerogative of the wealthy, right?
Yeah,
people that can afford. Because I mean, you know, you look at like deforestation in the Amazon, and it's easy to demonize those people, but they're usually the poorest people,
right,
that are doing the tree cutting. I mean, you know, obviously higher up the chain, there's powerful people, but
it's all just everything's connected. You know, it's just And like you talk about the Illuminati, that would almost be comfort. I think sometimes we that's a comfortable idea that someone is actually in control of things, where it's just been evolving without our specific intentions. Because there's this thing. Have you heard of entropy before?
Yeah.
So that's context. Well, like in science, it's, you know, like your cup of hot tea gets cold because the energy is leaving, it's dissipating, it's going somewhere else, and it's all chaos, kind of. So things normally in nature tend towards chaos and destruction, unless you put an outside energy source into it. So like you can look at that in life and in humanity and say, if you are not focused on something, then it will just evolve without your understanding of it, and most likely it will end in like destruction and chaos. And so I think we live in like that time of, I think things are very chaotic. YouTube is a complete mess for children. I saw this one TED Talk that was super disturbing that I don't know if I talked to you about, but like, you know, those Kinder eggs?
No.
Okay, so they're illegal in the States because they have a little toy inside, so a kid might choke, but it's basically a chocolate egg, and you open it up and there's a little toy in it. So there's these videos of just hands opening up these Kinder eggs and then finding the toy and taking it out, and parents. We've replaced other children with technology, right? So like that was kind of, I was going to connect that point to my rant earlier. It's like, it used to be you just had kids and you play with the kids, but now we've shut all of our kids indoors and there's no kids. So you still want to break as a parent, because, you know, it's again, like, you shouldn't be involved with your kid all day. So now we took away the other kids, and now we just give them a device so that they are silent and still for a little bit. And so then these kids are watching these videos of people opening up eggs. They're just sitting there like consuming, like, and then they just watch another one because it's autoplay, right? They don't have to do anything. We've made it so easy to just sit and consume. Like we've created perfect consumers. Like I think my students are incredible consumers. Like they will just sit and consume. And they want choice with that. So they, you know, that's where, I mean, in some level academics is consuming, but it's not what they're wanting. So then That's the tricky part.
Mm-hmm.
But they will consume whatever. Like they're fanatics about it.
Yeah, and what gets so terrifying is I don't think people really, because like even I just barely have considered it, but I don't think people understand how quickly this is changing. Like I think that I can already see the difference in humans, that is to say adolescents in this context.
Yeah.
With this short amount of time, with constant contact with information consumption and just like, mindless scrolling, I swear I can see the changes already. Yeah. And I think this is going to change so fast. It takes one generation for everything to just be normal. That's all it takes.
Right.
Like we think it takes a long time. It doesn't. It takes one generation of kids to think something's normal, and that shit is that way for the next however long, Yeah. And people are like, when I, not to say this in an arrogant way, I'll throw myself in this, but by and large, when I look at society and what we're doing, wherever I go in the world, whether it be Korea, Colombia, or the US, I don't see people asking the deepest questions. Like, what are we doing?
Right. Yeah.
Where are we going with this? What's the point of this? Like, I don't, and I feel like that's so important to ask those questions, because those answers help guide everything else,
Right. Yeah.
And I guess religion used to answer that for whole societies, right? Like if you could get everyone to believe in your religion, then you get everybody on the same page, and we all have a similar myth that we follow.
Right. Yeah, because again, since most people are in the group mentality, like they haven't progressed out of that, like then they're just going to go along with what everyone says anyway, kind of thing. So and because our education system does not produce, it's not designed to produce people who are free thinkers, right? Who are questioning things. And I also think too, with the longevity of parents, right? Because that was a big, like that was always Piaget's theory. It's like you needed a parent to die in order to finally progress through another stage of adulthood, kind of thing. Like that's when he thought real adulthood started, was at the death of a parent. And I think with parents living so long, and like you don't have ever the chance to be like, like it's a very strange time, I think, to be a human on the planet. So I don't know. But yeah, I do think there is change, and I think Diana, her theory on autism, which was interesting, like the rise of autism, like is that just our brain and nature getting used to not needing humans to interact with? Because that's one of the things of autism, is like you don't see social cues. And is that a result of our generation watching so much TV? You know what I mean? Like, and like nature just going, oh, okay, like humans aren't a big deal anymore, so let's try this stuff out, see if it works. Because those aren't mistakes. It's nature trying something. It's our so that comes from somewhere. So is that because like like you said, in our childhood, like I played a lot, but I probably watched way too much TV. I'm sure I watched too much TV. So that probably held me back on some level for a long time, is the amount of TV I watched. So we are not very thoughtful. A lot of people, you just wake up and do the thing, and you don't think about it. And when you do that, I think you just get sucked into things, and then it's like you said, it's normal. And so if it's normal, it's normal, and you're not going to question it, and you just live on. So no, I just keep throwing a lot of stuff. We hadn't talked in a while, so it's just.
I know. If we're more consistent, maybe we won't just have these like brain dumps. You know what I mean?
Right. Here's 45 points I wanted to make. Yes.
Right. Well, my last semester was the most challenging year of teaching that I can remember. Now, granted, maybe it was that hard when I started. I can't remember, but it's not in my conscious memory. Like I don't remember having those feelings. I mean, it's just been so hard, and it's given me these existential questions where it's like, what am I doing? What are we doing? Is this right? It's not right. No, the answer, I can tell you that. No, it's not right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because with those kids, I was telling you, like, I'll do this from time to time, but I just gave them a thing where I said, school is, and they finish it. I don't give it I don't try to make it negative or positive. And they were overwhelmingly negative. And they were saying school is a prison essentially. And, that's why I said they want choice and freedom and things like that. But, but also my kids, and I like them. So I'm not saying this against them necessarily, but that's why I don't think they have any attention span. I mean, those are the differences that I'm seeing. And it's like, if I'm not entertaining them as a teacher, I'm failing. and I'm losing them. Like, and maybe it shouldn't be that way, but that's the reality. If I'm not entertaining them,
right. Well, that we've convinced them that learning needs to be fun, and they need to be doing fun things in order, like games and things to like, and that's bullshit. Like, it's bullshit. Learning is hard. You have to work hard at it. Like it's not easy. And sometimes it's not fun. It's not, I like to read. Sometimes I don't want to, but I know it's good for me, so I'm going to do it. And now I'm taking notes, and it's kind of a pain in the ass because I could just be reading, and could be enough, but I want to be better at it. So now I stop and actively recall. So I see the payoff, but it's not like at the time I'm like, oh, I'm having so much fun learning and actively recall. Like, it's kind of a pain in the ass, but I believe in it,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, yeah, like I agree with that, but at the same time, I also don't think kids should have to go to school and be bored for 8 hours.
No, they shouldn't. But there should be choice, but they also need to learn how to focus on something. And that it is, learning anything is useful. I'll put quotes around the anything word, obviously, but you never know when you need what you learn, ever. And learning something just makes your brain better. You can have connections, and who knows what you can do. And so we just need to do a better job of, like, again, going away from the idea of making learning fun all the time to, like, learning is important. Like, it's good to learn. And sometimes you just got to do like in the military, shut up and color. Sometimes you just got to shut up and color. That's all I got to do.
Those are the questions. Those are the answers I don't have when I ask myself that. I wonder if I'm correct or not. Cause I've wondered is there like a way of judo teaching, like judo, they use their own, use another person's force against them kind of like, is there a way to harness one? Cause I don't know anything about Montessori and all those early childhood theories, but it's essentially helping a kid find their own intuitive path, right?
Yeah. No, I think there's
you're like, that's it.
Well, because then they want it, and then they'll listen to you. Because that's where, like, when you've talked about when you did high school, and then kids knew you played football, and then all of a sudden now I'm going to listen to you because you're doing something I want to do, and it's just. That's why, I think I'd mentioned them or maybe written about this. I would like the name teacher to be like the profession, like the name of it to be changed to something else. Because I don't think there's many kids who are like, ooh, I want to teach. Do you know what I mean? But if you're the lead learner, ooh, okay, maybe I do want to learn. Maybe I'll listen to you more about learning, and where we're more generalized in the sense of we're teaching about the brain and learning as opposed to content stuck. Because I think and that's the thing. I think that's the interesting. That fascinates me is that what is enough learning? What is just enough? Because we're probably doing too much, and it's not learning. And some kids are actually learning. I don't know. But I think that's the mystery, and that's the important problem to kind of keep looking at and keep working on. Because it's, kids are different paths. They're all going to be different. And I was reading something where direct instruction is actually like really bad. But I think it's only really bad when you're trying to do it to kids who don't care. Like if you're trying to directly instruct someone and teaching them that way and they have no interest in what you're saying, like it's a moot. You can't do anything. So it's not going to do it. So that's about what we do. I direct instruct all the time to a bunch of kids who don't care.
Well, because it's funny because, the most meaningful education that I feel like I had was university. I'm sure I apologize to every teacher I had between grade 1 and 12 because they gave me so much. I'm sure that I just don't even recall because as an adolescent, your needs are you don't even care. You're concerned about other things, right? Yeah. But the university system is not anywhere near ideal. They're the worst teachers in the world. Yeah. But I sat through some lectures that were just life changing at the same time.
Well, that's why it's like when you talk about student centered and you shouldn't lecture. Well, but no, sometimes you should lecture. Sometimes lectures are super interesting and they're really good and you learn a lot from it. Like it's just you have to be interested in what you're doing as the teacher. Like if you're not interested in it, yes, the lecture is going to be awful. And if you're just like whatever. But lecturing is fine. especially if the kids are interested and they want to know. That's a great way to teach, right?
Sure.
So it's like you said, it's like we get too caught up in the student-centered thing, and kind of, I think people lose track of who they are as a teacher and what they're doing. Kind of.
Well, it's just the pendulum swinging back and forth, right?
Yeah.
Like you've got the typical worst case scenario, which is like, have you seen I know you know the song, We Don't Need No Education, but have you ever seen the video?
Yeah, I think, yeah.
God,
That's a huge factory. Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, and it was just like so far ahead of its time with the factory thing and all that.
Yeah.
So obviously that's where the student-centered push came from, because it was the exact opposite of that, right?
Yeah.
And then, yeah, it's so hard to find balance. And for me, like something that you and I've talked about, like something that seems so clear is that the size of the organization is so important. And like once it gets past the threshold, it just becomes so difficult to really do something in a meaningful human way.
Right.
Because you just become another piece or cog in the wheel. And it's so hard to even if you're just staffing a school that's got 1,500 kids, what's the chances you're going to have everyone on the same philosophical page? What's the chances you're going to, everyone's going to be clear about what we're doing and why we're doing it and how we do it? The answer is it's not going to happen. Like,
right. And especially if you don't do anything about it as the school. Do you know what I mean? If you're not purposeful in challenging beliefs and getting your teachers to believe in what you believe in, and you're not trying or checking in with that, then you have no chance. Like that's entropy, right? Like if you're not focused and putting energy into that thing, then most likely it will tumble into chaos. And then if your workers, if your teachers are more interested in their peer group than they are your institution, that now, again, like I said, then they're more interested in fitting in with the other teachers. And so then you have to get very lucky that the teachers, their philosophy is to work hard and be learners and to love their kids. Because if that's the thing that happens magically, then you're fine. But if I'm more interested in traveling and what I want, and I need my break time so I can go do my laps, and like, how dare you want me to work outside of school? I need balance. I need balance. A lot of balance people need. I don't fuck balance.
What? Tell me where you're going, because like for years I've been on that balance thing.
No, just my personal thing is I love my life outside of school. I love my family, and I love to teach. And I love education, and I will talk ad nauseum about ideas. And again, I don't just look at ideas within schools. I love ideas, and I'll talk about that stuff. I love that. And that gives me energy and doesn't wear me out. So I could do that all day. Like, it doesn't. And I was reading this book about football coaches. It's called Gridiron Genius. And it was like Nick Saban and Bill Belichick. The only thing they talk about with each other is football. They had this like dinner together with this other guy, and Nick Saban's like, my wife's not going to be there. So they're all like, yes, because they're so obsessed with football. Right. And that's all they want to talk about. And like their wives give them crap. They're like, don't you talk about anything else? Like, no, because, we love that. And that's what drives us. That's a passion. So I think that's the key, is like if as a worker, as a person in a career, if you don't get that from your job, then you're not going to have, then yes, I think what disguises that is this idea of balance. Like, I need my time, because then your time, you're doing stuff that interests you, because your job doesn't really interest you.
I'm with you. Okay, exactly.
Yeah, because so you need to have a profession in which you get energy from it, and you care about it, and it cares about you. And if you don't have that, then you don't have balance, because the job that's a lot. It's a lot of your time. Yeah. And that's one of the beautiful things about teaching, is like, it is a lot of your time, but we also get half the year off. So, I mean, that's pretty awesome. You don't get gigs like that anywhere.
Well, see, that's the part of taking the sabbatical, right? Like, that's what I'm saying. I've obviously forgotten how good I've got it, Right. Yeah. But the
institution is important. The institution you're at is important. And if it doesn't align with who you are as a person, that will wear you out. It will. Because culture eats strategy for breakfast, as they say. The culture always wins.
That's a good quote.
And I think, reflecting on myself, I think one of the things that I've realized is I identify more with the kids, I think. And that's what helps me to persevere. Instead of, so like, that's why maybe if at times the culture of the teachers are negative, You know what I mean? Like it's not a healthy culture, or like their belief system might not align with mine. I belong more to the students, I guess, in my head. So then it's okay. You know, does that make sense? So that's how I'm able to kind of stay sane and not get worn out and not change myself as a teacher and like do different things.
Well, there's this, I don't know if this is what you meant, but I find myself identifying with the kids all the time because it's weird that I am a teacher because I don't like institutions. And that's where I identify with the kids when they're like, this sucks. And I'm like, it does, doesn't it?
It does. That's why you're there. You're there to usurp the institution or to change it.
I've always been, I suppose. But see, that's the thing. And I think this is why I'm struggling too, is I don't believe I'm really going to change something.
Right. But you can change your classroom. So at least you can see that. And
I do believe that. I do believe that.
And if we can get adults to develop, then all of them will want to change their classrooms.
But did you watch the college football national championship?
I didn't. I didn't. I have kids. You'll find this out. I have kids now, so I go to bed. I'm like, I'll just see what the score is tomorrow.
Well, let me rant on this for a second.
Go Clemson.
Yeah. Here's the point, because I'm going to rant and I'm going to lose my point. The point I wanted to get at was, why can't we create a school staff the way that a coach creates a coaching staff? So don't let me forget. That's where I'm going. Okay.
All right. Yeah.
But on a side note, man, religion is something that's in your bones. Like you don't like. My favorite novel is a novel called Wise Blood, and it's about this. Okay. It's a very Southern Gothic novel written by Flannery O'Connor, and it's about this guy named Hazel Motes, and he is dead set on convincing himself and everybody that he does not believe in Jesus.
Okay. Yeah.
So he starts the Holy Church of Christ without Jesus, and it's a very absurd book, right? It's kind of tongue in cheek. And the point that it's getting at, and this is kind of why it fascinated me. Like, her point was that Southerners, as a culture, it's in their blood, and you can act like you don't believe, but you can't help it. It's there, and you can lie to yourself all you want. Okay. That's how I feel with Clemson football. Like, I went through years where I was finally done with it, and I didn't care, and I felt so liberated.
Right.
But once Clemson started making it to national championships, it's like I have no choice.
You have no choice.
Like,
none.
What are we talking about here? Like, I have to watch this, and I mean, I'm in pieces. Like, I am literally at times, like, it's embarrassing to me to watch the 18-year-old kid play quarterback on this stage and just be like, yeah, it's just a game, whatever, and just be totally calm. Yeah. And I'm a 33-year-old man sitting in Costa Rica watching, and I'm in pieces. You know what I mean? Like, what's going on with me? Like, so something. I can't deny that I'm a drug addict with this. Like, this is something that is beyond me.
Yeah,
that was interesting. But anyway, with that being said, as you and I talk, and it makes me wonder, why can't people create small learning communities? Like, why is that not a paradigm? Like, look at this guy, Dabo Swinney. Like, whether you agree with him or not, he's a very religious guy, But the reason I'm using him as an example is because his whole program, so to speak, is built on those values, and the people he brings in align with that on some level. Now, that I don't think he's fanatical in that way, but I'm just saying, like, they all are clear in what their objective is, and it's not to win national championships. Their objective is to create good men.
Okay, right.
And byproducts of that are national championships sometimes.
Right.
Okay. Why can't we do that?
I don't know. But
and how big is a football team? You said the number is 150 or 180. A college football team is about
probably around there. Yeah. Well, that's kind of my hope for the future. Is we, as people, understand we're connected to everyone, right? So you remove the like hate and like that stuff, or like prejudice. Like, if you understand, like, that's like that you're connected with everyone, and that if I lived your life and had your parents, I would be you. And like, you understand people, and you don't judge them. You just accept them. If we could ever get to that part, then what would be cool is to become smaller communities, like where you are just that group of 150. And like we are living in a world where we can make our own chairs and stuff. And like, you don't have to worry about making money and profit and stuff, because you're able to take care of yourselves. But you're not in a danger, like, because the danger with that is or with home education, or like I said earlier, why am I not in charge of educating my own child? Well, yeah, maybe I should be, but not everyone should. There are some beliefs and ideas that should not that need to go away, you know. And if you are like a white supremacist, I don't really want you telling your kid what to believe,
Yeah.
you know, or any sort of supremacist, you know.
God, well, see, that's the other side of the coin, isn't it? Like,
Yeah. So it's just because I know I'm right, you know, I should be able to teach my kid. Well, everyone thinks they're right, you know. So it's but how can we possibly get there as a society with the institution of education that we have right now? I don't think we can.
Well, I just think it's antiquated, and I think it's serving needs that we don't want to be honest about. We don't want to be honest and say, well, we now live in a consumer society where both parents have to work, realistically.
Yeah.
And we are kind of a babysitter. Now, that doesn't mean that we should be babysitting. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't make learning happen.
Right.
But we have to have an 8-hour school day now. Like, our society is built on this, and we don't really have an answer. Well, that's messed up, because that's not, that wears on my spirit as well, you know, because I'm just an idealistic person, and it's hard for me not to believe in what I'm doing. It's hard for me to, how can I express this? Like, institutions have their propaganda, their, what do you call it? Their, I don't know, it's the speech that you hear, like the thing that you say all the time, but then the reality doesn't quite match up to it, you know.
Right. Yes.
Like, as in other words, like a good example would be, well, we're here to like educate kids, and that is absolutely true. But we're also there because we have to have somewhere to put these kids for 8 hours, which is also absolutely true.
Right. Right.
And
we don't want to acknowledge the reality of our situation.
Yeah. And I'm still, and you know, as a teacher, I'm still growing from the way that I was educated and what my institution expects of me everywhere I go. And because, for example, I was taught a good teacher will fill the instruction time to the end. If a kid finishes early, you've got extension work for them. And I did that well. I did that well, you know. And now at 33, I'm like, that's bullshit. If I finish my work as a teacher and you as my administrator give me more shit, I'm gonna be like, man, fuck you. Like, what are you doing? Like, that's not respectful to me as a person. You know what I mean?
No.
And what we're really talking about when you say fill the instructional time is crowd control. That's what you're really talking about.
Yeah.
And that's just hard, man. Especially like in this particular context, I've got 1.5 classes. Like, grade 6 kids have an hour and a half in the same classroom, and I need to fill that with instruction to the end. That's not even being respectful to the kid as a person.
No, it's not. No. Well, see, with your kids, it should be just so you know, if you wanted to do the focus diffuse time, 25 minutes of focus.
What do you
should be able to?
In other words, 25 of, like, this is when you do your work, 25 minutes.
Or if you're doing a lecture or something, 25, and then after 25 minutes you stop, and then for 5 minutes they do whatever, they can talk to each other, whatever, play video games, and then you come back another 25 minutes, and then 5-minute break. It's better for our brain, because then if our brain goes into something called diffuse mode, and if it's actually still thinking about stuff, and it's making connections for us without us thinking about it, and that's when real learning happens.
That went so fast, I got to really absorb that. Tell me that one more time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So during focus time, your brain is like, it's only using a little part of it, and like you're trying to build that knowledge like right there. And then when you go into diffuse time, whatever you were just focused on kind of goes everywhere in your brain, and your brain naturally forms connections with it, and will still be thinking about it. So like if you're working on that's why so many realizations happen when you're on vacation or you're walking around not thinking about the problem that you have, because your brain is still churning it. So like a good thing to do as a student is, there's a great book, it's called Learning How to Learn. Great. It's written for kids. Like, you should have all of your students read it. It's very readable. And it's excellent, and it really goes into the brain mechanics and the chemistry and stuff. It's super, super useful, and like how to learn things, and like how I'm going to go way off here. Bring me back. What the hell was I talking about? So no. So then if you're working on a hard problem, like a math problem, or like you're writing an essay, and you're really stumped on something, if you just stop and you do something else for a little bit, your brain will probably figure it out. So when you go back to it, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, this is easy. So it's really important to give kids those breaks throughout the day, so their brain is healthy.
So how do you were talking about the focus time versus the infused time? How do you do that in your class? Diffuse.
What I try to do is, so I limit it to 10 minutes because they're 10. So you think about like these like kindergartens where they're like sitting, learn, just is crazy. Anyway, so like I do a 10-minute mini lesson. So one thing I do, and I do really well at, is I shut up after 10 minutes. Like I understand that I need to do as the small amount of talking as possible. And so 10 minutes is over. I'm very good at my mini lessons. Like I've got that down, because some teachers will just talk for like 25, 30 minutes because they feel like they have to, like we've been taught that that's what you have to do. And so 10 minutes. So then they have 5 minutes to kind of reflect on their learning, actively engage with it. That's another thing. Like the whole idea of rereading books and rereading your notes is not a good way to learn. It's actually, you have to try and actively recall what the information was and then look at your notes and go, oh, have I learned it? Because if you just look at your notes, you're like, oh yeah, I totally know this. And you don't. You can pass the test, but you haven't learned anything. So then I give them time to kind of actively think about it, or they set themselves up, or they can have social time and talk to each other for the 5 minutes. And then we go into 10 minutes of independent work, like focused work. And then they get 5 minutes, maybe if they want to play a video game or watch a YouTube video or whatever, they can do that. And then we do another 10 minutes of work. And then we do 5 minutes of like social sharing, what your learning was. And then we take a 15-minute break where they go outside. And I guarantee you, I get more learning out of that than the teachers who do 60 minutes. Like I bet teachers who have 60 minutes of silent work. I have no data on this, and it could just be my own bias, but I would guarantee that there's probably more learning happening in my room, and the kids are retaining more, like they're actually learning it. Whereas it's not the illusion of learning, which that was the term I read, and just like, that's what I think our whole system is based on, is the illusion of learning, which is really sad. but I think they're really taking things with them. And so I try to, implement things to, it's still my responsibility. I have them write things down and I look, that's the other thing, like, I've been thinking about is return on investment. So like, what is the most important thing you can do with your time as a teacher? And make sure you're doing that a lot. So like
what?
Feedback, right? So I have to look at their work. Like that's me reading their writing is way more important than me planning a lesson.
Okay.
Because if I'm only just planning the lesson without looking at their work, like I'm not respecting them at all, right? They're just, because that's the problem with, again, that's the problem with programs. Do you have to do like you have this textbook and it tells you what to teach, or like you get this teacher manual and it has 180 days worth of lessons. Well, why does it have 180 days worth of lessons? Because there's 180 days of school. And why are there 180 days of school? Well, because we were agriculturalists and that was what we decided, because we needed their kids out of the house for 180 days and then back so they could do other stuff. So it's not because it's the best thing for kids. That's not any program out there that you have to use, that you have to be, there's 180 lessons in, is bullshit. Because the only reason it has that is because they need to sell it. And because all the schools have to fill their days with shit. So so it's all crazy. It's like once you open the one layer, like it really gets messy. Like the sausage making is ridiculous, right?
What I want to do with you at some point, which we've been talking about for 2 years now, is like, I'd really like to start to hash out, because I think it would help me in my practice and how I raise my children. Even what would this school look like if we were to put together a community? How do you fund it? What does it look like? How many people are in it? How does it operate? What is the physical space like? What are our philosophies? How ought it to evolve? Like, what would be the protocol by which it could evolve? How do you retain teachers? How do you, or I don't know. I mean, these are just all the questions that I have, because that I always go back to Jordan Peterson. One thing that he says is, you should wake up. He's like, everyone's obsessed with their rights, and it put me in the mirror immediately, and I was like, damn. He's like, no one talks about responsibility. And I know that's kind of a more conservative way of looking at it, but I just had not, he's like, it's just he said, that's kind of an insidious pathological way of thinking, to constantly be thinking about what you're owed. And there's historical reasons for that. Obviously, some people, obviously we have extremely disenfranchised groups in every society that needs to say, where are my rights? You know what I mean? Right. And even just as a human, you're subjecting yourself to subjugation in a social system, because that's how we exist now. Right. So, I mean, there's obviously room to ask about rights, but responsibility. And so one thing that he said was, what's the most good? Like, if you take your life seriously, and these are these big questions I'm talking about, like, why are you here, and what are you going to do, and what's your legacy going to be, and et cetera. What's the most good you can do? And what he said was, what's the heaviest thing you can pick up and carry? Like, in other words, if it was me and you, and we're in a a hunter-gatherer situation and we got to walk from this mountain to that mountain and we got to pack our shit up and move. What's the heaviest thing you can carry, Ben? Because Angela can't carry it. I mean, you got to pick up something heavier. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, with that being said, what's the most good that I could do with my expertise as a teacher? And part of it makes me wonder, well, maybe I could really, you know, I constantly talk about what should be different, but I've never sat down and really hashed out what this would look like.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the most good I could do.
I'm all in. I'm in for it.
Well, you are like you've got a PhD already. You need to just turn this stuff in and get your PhD. You're like, I don't know what you're waiting on.
Yeah, but don't get me started on licenses and labels. So just I just think it's funny I get paid for a master's that I don't use. So it's just fine.
Why don't you use it?
Well, like the knowledge from it. Like I don't really the practice and stuff that I learned. Like it changed me. You know what I mean? Like the stuff I learn now is just because I learned it. Like just because I'm interested and I read and like I'm way more of a learner now than I was when I was getting my master's. You know, I was a complete waster of time. And that's what I realized now having kids. It was like, Jesus, just the amount of wasted time that I could have been doing something important, like you were saying, or like responsible, or like lifting a heavy load. I was freeloading, man. I was freeloading. So that's one of the blessings of children for me. Is I've really been very fortunate. Like the military gave me a real understanding of how lucky I was as a person. Like just the privilege that I had growing up and that I was not respecting and I wasn't taking advantage of. And just it gave me a real understanding of responsibility and discipline. And so I'm forever grateful for that. And that's kind of kids have really brought that. So without the institution of military in my life and without the institution of like family, like those have been huge institutions for me that have really helped me on my path. And then it probably, so that. But yes, because you said I should have a PhD. Anyway, yes, no, I want to hash out the ideas and see what it means to implement them too on some level. Because now, like Diana, one of her ideas is to make, like if it was in Colombia, you make it a hacienda. So like one of the ideas would be like, depending on the country and culture you're in, you would want the school or the barn to have like a piece of the society within it.
Absolutely.
Right? Like an acknowledgement of the past and everything. So, and we would have beans like every day, the frijoles, because then my daughter would eat. She doesn't eat anything else. Sorry. So,
I gotta share this with you too, because like something that seems so clear is that because thinking about like the way we're made, the way our brains are set up, like this, the school has to be familial, tribal, humanistic. Yes. That's what I'm getting at. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I really liked my school in Korea. Like it was such a blessing to work with those people and that philosophy. Like it was great. But even me, I don't remember if I told you this, but maybe I did. But it was just this moment where it was at the end of my 2 years. It was it was last year. It was probably around May, and I had to run to the bank. And I'm in the middle of a city, so I could just pedal. I would just leave campus and pedal to the bank. Then my sense of freedom. It was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. School's not over till like 3:30. Right. Just the fact that I got to get off campus, like it felt like I was out of prison.
Right. Yeah.
Now think of that.
Yeah.
What is going on, man? Like there is something, because maybe this is just my personal. Maybe I've just been doing this for 10 years. I need a little break, but I feel just being at that place every day in that setting. I don't know, and I didn't feel that in college. Like that's what I'm always trying to look back and be like, what's the difference? Why is university different?
Yeah. There's a lot more freedom,
school settings. Yeah. Well, it definitely is freedom, because it's definitely because you couldn't find a more antiquated. Like college is simultaneously the cutting edge of research and the oldest, most backwards way of teaching you could possibly get to.
Yeah.
But that's there's that, like the fact that I'm a teacher and I'm feeling like, oh, I'm out of school, like I'm out, like. Yeah. I don't want to feel that way. I don't want my kids to feel that. I don't want anyone's kids to feel that way.
No. Yeah, you want them to feel like they're home when they're at the school. Because then that's what you hear a lot, especially like with child protection and stuff. And it's like the relationship, like we're not their family. Like that's something you hear, like I've heard a lot. coming from superiors is like, you know, you're not their dad, or you're not like, not, they don't tell me, they don't sit down and tell me this stuff, but just like giving the speeches to the staff and everything, like, we're not family. And I'm like, but maybe we should be, like, maybe that's what we need specifically now, because the family has become so decentralized. Maybe school needs to adopt more of a family kind of atmosphere thing, because then, or whatever that would look like. So that I really hear you on that, and I 100% agree with that.
Just a lot of emotional ranting. Nothing organized here.
Oh, that's good. That's good too. Man, I won't even go into that. Never mind.
Give it to me.
No, it was some Joe Rogan thing with the doctor guy, and he was pretty interesting guy. But I was trying to think if there's anything else that I'd done, because we are going to have to wrap up soon. The kids are out. The reason it's been so quiet is the kids are at swimming practice. So.
Okay.
But they're going to be back soon, and then all hell will break loose.
Like, here's another thing I've thought of, like, just where education will go, because, like, what is the point of the institution? Right. Let's just say it is purely, let's go with what we say, which is that it's purely just to learn and to develop the person, right? And everything's changing because of the internet, right? Like, Uber is putting taxis out, Airbnb is knocking hotels out. Like, what is going to happen with the setting of the school? Like, I still believe that there is a place for us as teachers. Like, other people are like, oh, kids can just get information off the internet, and that part's true. But if you think that's what we're doing and that's it, then you are completely, like, you need to ask some deeper questions, basically. And but with that being said, I've wondered, like, since information itself, like, we're not the fount of information anymore. That's not what we do, you know? So how could you, let's say we lived in the same small town, for example, how could you use the internet and these devices and augment that with specialists like you and I to create a community of learners that don't necessarily have to be, like, obviously we would come together, but you don't have to necessarily. I don't know. I don't have that answer, but it's almost like I've wondered, like, where is there's something, I hate to use the word market because it sounds like a profit-driven motive, but there must be some space where that has to exist out there, where it's like, hey, guess what? I've got 10 years of experience, got a master's in education. These are this is my philosophy of education. Do you want me to teach your kids? Like, I don't know. Like, and then they don't go to a school necessarily, but they do have a mentor, and you build a curriculum with them, and the curriculum's based we'll keep it like by semester. We'll keep something traditional.
Right.
That's not,
you don't want to freak out them too much.
No, but I've just wondered, because, like,
I wonder if there's, because you could, I'm sure there's rules set up though, like what are the laws of the land? Because I think there are like, homeschool is one thing. So could you, as an educator, could you call it homeschool, but it's with a bunch of, you know what I mean? Like, and when you turn into a school, now you have other responsibilities and liabilities and things that you would have to maintain, like through federal government and state government stuff. So it's like so let me boil this down to the one thing, like with anything, like the idea that I can't bury myself where I want, that creeps me out. Like, I would like to just be thrown in the dirt and become a tree. Like, that's what I want to do, but I'm not allowed to do that. And I think that's kind of fucked up. Like, that, why, like, I understand because of the disease and stuff, and like there was a point to it, but like, why can't I just be buried in my backyard so my kids can, like, if they want to see me, you know what I mean? Like, they know where I am, and now I'm a tree, and hey, look, there's Dad. He's the tree now. Oh, awesome.
Right.
So like, what are the laws that we've put in place, and why have we done them? And again, like, things, why aren't we changing them and looking at them and trying to understand where we are? And like society's different now. Like you have a rule that you invented in 1810. Shouldn't we look at it afresh and go, maybe it could be changed now? So I don't know. Sorry for the burial thing. I know that was a little macabre.
But I felt the same thing. But even that's just, I was going to tell you, walk outside naked. You don't even have to do that. Just take your shirt off and walk around outside. Don't even get naked. Take your shirt off and walk around. And that's weird. Like, we can't. there's so many deep questions that we haven't asked. Like we're insane. Like we're so driven by our stories that we just aren't even, we're in the forest and can't see the trees, you know?
No, no. And there's not enough people asking the question. Like you said, like just ask why. Like there's very few people ask why about anything because they're not taught to. I think that that's the one thing you can do. I'm like, because you can like that's the Richard Feynman, the physicist. Like he's like, if you ask why enough, it gets super interesting. Like super.
Only like five times, right? You can go 5 whys and you're probably
and you're
there.
like, good Lord, I have no idea. Or like my Amelia will ask me something. I'm like, Jesus, I really don't know. And like the lies we tell our kids, like sunrise, like that's a lie. The sun's not rising. It's not.
Yeah.
The earth is rotating.
Yeah.
But we don't, but we want to simplify things. And then, but we take the beautiful complexity out of them and we take real teaching out just so we don't have to explain something. So, so you'll get to enjoy this when your kid starts asking you questions. You'll be like, shit, I don't know. Let's look this up together.
I was gonna ask you before we end, is there like one place I'm interested now? Like I've always felt like every time I get a degree, I'm like, I will never go back to school. Just because I don't even like it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, granted, there's things that I do learn, and I'm grateful for that. I'm not. Yeah. But my interest now, because I'm going to have a child, or I'm kind of interested in early childhood development, and I never really gave that enough attention. I'm interested in Montessori and those philosophies.
Yeah.
Is there any reading you would suggest to me?
I would definitely read like because with your psychology background, like Piaget and them, and what the Russian
Vygotsky?
guy.
What's his name? Vygotsky?
I mean, I've read the Vygotsky. Yeah.
Something
it was
like
super interesting to like see my kids go through the transitions that he talks about. And then like education, I think you would need to make sure, like Maria Montessori has a notebook that she has that I've never read, but it's on my Kindle library, which I've found is that's actually called your anti-library. So it's these books that you haven't read that motivate you, you know, that one day you'll read them. So
that's my entire library.
Right.
90% of it.
That's good. It's a good thing to have. So that's good. Oh, there's another one that Diana really likes. It's called Reggio Emilia.
Yeah.
It's from Italy too. Montessori, like it's amazing. The Italians figured this out in the 40s, and we still just can't do it. We can't seem to wrap our mind around it. So that's another one to read. That's super cool. Like that sort of education is super hard. It's like, it's really difficult for the teachers. So I mean, you need to be really, really good and really, really thoughtful. But it's so awesome. It's such a joy to probably participate in that. I would love to.
I've even considered, like, if I end up going back to the States at some point, I would probably try to get a job at a Montessori school and teach that and be with that age group, because I mean, I wish I had 3 or 4 years of experience in it already, because now how valuable would that be for me raising my child, you know?
Yeah. But you can experience it, you know, read about it and experience it with them, kind of thing. Because we've accidentally did some Montessori stuff with our kids here, like having the mattress on the floor. That's a Montessori thing.
Why
we just did that because we were lazy.
But why is that Montessori?
I don't know. It's just that it's an easier way, I think, for them to learn how to be in a bed. Because then if they fall out, it's not a big deal, kind of thing. And then mirrors are important, like that they can look at themselves and practice things. And you want to make things accessible and easy. Then that's like habit building stuff too. So just the way we set up the toys, and we make sure we have a ton of books, and so you know, and we let them do things and make decisions. Those free range parenting techniques, you know. And
then it's kind of like trusting nature, isn't it? It's like the idea of well, anyway, that's something else. But something else I've considered on a side note is, you know, talking about the institution and the school and putting such a big deal on it. People that have good parents, for the most part, seem like those kids end up being pretty smart. Yeah, and it doesn't really matter the school, does it?
No, they've actually done research on it. It's all about the kid. It's almost, the school has almost nothing to do with.
So then, what are we talking about? Like, if that's the case, then what are we even talking about? You know what I mean? It's like
that's why you need to make the school like one. I think this is something I made up, but you know, someone else could have made it up before me, so I can't take all the credit. But one of the things I want to do is I want to remove luck from success and from like being a good person. and being like, when I put good, whatever that means. Because I was like, I went to crap schools, apologies to my teachers. They weren't very good, but like I had solid parents, and they taught me to appreciate learning, and it took me a little longer. I rejected it at some point. But it wasn't because of the education I received. You know, I mean, it had something to do, I'm sure, very small, because I just happened to be lucky. You know, I was born to in a good, you know, I got lucky, and I would like to remove that. You know, I don't think that's a fair system. It's not a fair system to just rely on. And then if you look within a school, you got to be lucky to get a good teacher, right? Because I know we don't like saying that all teachers aren't great, you know, and, oh, they're great, but they're not. There's a lot of teachers who aren't very good. So you have to be lucky to get a good teacher. And like, you have to be lucky as a teacher to get a good boss. And so it's just a lot of luck. And so I would like to remove that.
Yeah, I mean, I know we got to go, but it's funny, like so many. I don't know. That would have been an arrogant statement. I'm just going to leave that one where I'm going to go there.
It's good to have some arrogance. It's good to have some confidence.
Well, it was just thinking about, you know, kind of the damage that kids have had done to them. And it's just funny, some of the way the students will come to me like, are you going to take off 10 points if I don't do this? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And then
my
I realized,
kids are terrified of pre-tests. They're terrified of them. I'm like, why? What? They're like, this is going to affect my grade. I'm like, shut up. What are you talking about?
Someone has made my job significantly harder now because the kids are like on edge constantly about. And that's what sucks about having them just for a year. It's like you get them to a place where they trust and believe in what you're doing, and then it's time for them to go. And hopefully get lucky. All right, my friend.
All right, sir.
School's going to start back soon. It's never supposed to be as long as it is each time.
Yeah.
My first semester was incredibly hard. I was in the darkness. I was drowning. So I didn't reach out to you as much.
Well, either you want to do it through, but we need to set up some time to hash out what the dream would look like.
Well, I'm sitting here taking notes. Like I'm gonna strike while the iron's hot as soon as I get off here with you, and just, if nothing else, just write down a sporadic, unconnected list of just things that come to mind.
Cool.
Things that started even way back when I was living there in Colombia. And I don't know what'll come of it. Let's just see where it goes.
Yeah, I'll do the same.
Okay.
Let's do some set a timer for 15 minutes. Just go nuts.
All right.
What is that called? What is that called? What type of writing is that when you're just not even thinking about it?
Automatic writing?
Yeah, something like that. Or anyway, I can't remember. But have a wonderful day and enjoy your last few days of vacation or family days, or family time is today's family day. Joaquin. He's so cool now.
Why?
He's just because he's able to talk more now. And he's such a lovable kid. So he comes in every morning. He goes, "I love you," and then he just gives you a hug and a kiss.
You're doing something well, then, I can tell you.
And he has his moments of where you're just like, what the hell? Like the toddler brain is, it's just so confusing. Anyway.
Hey, one more thing. I was going to ask you if you knew this guy. I just watched one interview with him, but some of the things that you say, he kind of says, I don't know if you've come across him. His name is Gabor Mate. Have you ever heard of him?
No.
He's just, anyway, one thing that he was saying earlier was, he was saying the first 7 years are crucial, but really the first 3 years are just incredibly important.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting because he was saying it's all about he said it's so nonverbal. And he said if you had to boil it down and make it as simple as possible, it's essentially taking it and saying to let your kid know in a nonverbal way with your actions, with everything that you want them, and you want them to be in your presence, and you want them to be there.
Well, that's the horrifying, now you get of the fucking phone. Like, because you are non-verbally telling your child that you don't care about them.
That's exactly what I thought.
We're doing it all the time. You're just looking at it and it's just like, yeah, honey, great. And just looking at that fucking thing. And then the kids are just like, oh, I'm not important. Great. Thanks. I'm going to take that to school with me. And just, so it's happening. Like you said, like, oh, well, but let's end on that note. All right. No, but, I was going to say, that's the cool thing about the Reggio Emilia, because they talk about the kid having 100 languages, because I think we judge kids way too harshly on their verbal, right? That's what that's how you classify kids, especially early. It's like, oh, you're able to talk or not. Like my daughter can talk. I mean, she's just verbal out the wazoo. And then my son, who's only a year and a half, he's not. So he's going to be judged way more harshly in the institution than she is because she's so eloquent, so it's just fascinating. So, all right. Well, bye, sir.
All right, brother. See you.
Have a good one. See you.
You too.